Hey everybody, today we're going to learn how to make a classic French cake. It's called Gateau Dacquoise. Now this is an easy to make cake that is perfect if you have extra egg whites that are hanging out in your refrigerator or freezer because it uses two kinds of meringue. A baked meringue biscuit that's flavored with almond flour and then Swiss meringue buttercream flavored with coffee extract. Put it all together and you have a delicious, easy to make cake. In anticipation of making this cake, I've organized all of my ingredients and my tools. Let's take a quick look at what goes into the cake. I'm gonna make a meringue with egg whites and sugar, and then we have almond flour and confectioner's sugar. Almond flour is just really just a fancy name for ground up almonds. There's no wheat flour in it. It's naturally gluten-free. I also have some chopped almonds that we're gonna use for decoration and crunch. I have a pastry bag fitted with a plain round tip, and then I have some parchment paper and I drew circles. I traced around an 8-inch cake pan. Don't forget to turn these upside down before piping the meringue and baking on them. There are two basic rules that you always want to follow when you're making a meringue. Number one, start with room temperature egg whites. Number two, whip the egg whites by themselves on a medium speed until they're frothy and opaque before adding any sugar. Take a look at those egg whites. They are frothy and opaque. Okay, it's time to start adding the sugar. Now don't do this all at once, but add the sugar in stages, just a little bit at a time. You don't actually have to add it with your fingers, but it is important that you do add it a little bit at a time, or else your meringue is going to deflate. Okay, I've added all my sugar, and you can see now that the meringue is pretty thick and glossy. It's like, hey, while I was making the meringue, I combined my almond flour and confectioner's sugar, and I stirred it around with a whisk to make sure that I didn't have any lumps. I'm gonna take half of my mixture, I'm gonna add it right on top of the meringue. I'm just gonna start to blend them together. Keep the parchment paper from lifting up while you're piping, take a little bit of the extra meringue and just dab some on your finger, and then you touch that underneath the paper. That will help to hold it in place. Start from the middle and start squeezing. Hold the pastry bag up high in the air and watch the meringue just slide right out to make a circle. Now that my circles are piped, I'm going to sprinkle them with a little bit of chopped almonds to add some extra texture and crunch. I preheated the oven to 250 degrees. We're going to bake the meringue layers for about 25 minutes. While our almond meringue layers are baking in the oven, let's get working on the buttercream. This is made with a different style of meringue called Swiss meringue. Here's our ingredients: egg whites, sugar, soft butter. For this meringue, we're going to combine the egg whites and the sugar in a bowl and stir it together. And then we're going to put it over a pan of gently simmering water. We see the texture of the egg whites right now. It's quite thick and viscous. We're going to warm this. As we warm it, the egg whites will become much more fluid and the sugar will dissolve. When the temperature reaches about 140 degrees, we're going to take the meringue off the stove. We're going to whip it as we did before until it's shiny and thick. Okay, we've reached 140 degrees. And the consistency of the egg whites, it's much more fluid than it was before. Now we're going to snap this on the machine and we're going to whip it on medium speed until it's shiny and thick. This meringue is shiny and thick, just like a marshmallow. It's time to add the butter. You do this in small bits, about a tablespoonful at a time. Buttercream for Dacquoise is classically flavored with coffee extract, but if you don't like coffee flavor, just add something else. I just took the meringue layers out of the oven. You can see that they're still light colored, right? But they're firm. That was about 25 minutes. I'm gonna now let them completely cool off before I separate them from the paper. Okay, I've got my baked meringue nice and crisp. I've divided up my buttercream into 2 equal parts. I'm gonna take half of the buttercream, spread it on the bottom layer. And then the second layer, I'm gonna flip it upside down so that it's a flat surface that's gonna be created. Be easier to put on the rest of the buttercream that way. Once the top is covered, I'm gonna work on the sides. Because I put it onto a cardboard, it makes it easy for me to pick up in the air. Again, if you just have it on a plate, you can also just reach over the edge. I'm just trying to make the sides so they're gonna be covered with buttercream, nice and smooth. I planned on a little extra buttercream for this recipe, so if you feel like piping decorations onto the top, there's plenty of leftover for that. To finish the cake, I'm gonna take some sliced almonds, and we're just gonna press them into the side of where the buttercream is still soft. Gives it a nice clean look, and also makes it easier for you to work with the cake because you don't have to worry about if it's super smooth along the edge. Okay, I'm done. Here's my finished Gateau Dacquoise. I'm gonna put it into the refrigerator for a while for the buttercream to firm up, which also is gonna give the crisp meringue layers a chance to soften up to make it easier to cut.